a mummy. A long time ago in ancient Egypt, there lived a pharaoh named Mika. And when Mika died, the royal peasants and priest wrapped his body to prepare it for the afterlife. But a few thousand years later, some archaeologists from another country discovered Mika's pyramid and took his sarcophagus with them. When Mika woke up, he was disappointed to find out that he was in a museum and not in the afterlife like he expected. On top of that, they didn't even put his sarcophagus in a nice spot. So Mika was angry, and he used his mummy powers to make a big mess of things in the museum. But even after Mika destroyed the museum, he wasn't satisfied. So he went outside, and that's where he really did some damage. That night, Mika was all ready for wrecking the city. Mummy's revenge. Mika was just getting started though. He went from country to country, destroying everything in his path. And wherever he went, he made headlines. Mummy destroyed La Villa. But after a while, Mika ran out of things to destroy, and people started losing interest. Anyways, city news: ribbon cutting at New Dub. Mummy destroyed piano at child's birthday party. Unfortunately, Mika settled down a little and tried to get used to everything, living in the modern world. And even though he would have rather been in the afterlife, he had to admit that television was a pretty good invention. One night, Mika was watching the news, and there was a story about how new archaeologists made a new discovery in Egypt. They found the tomb of Kayanobo, the pharaoh who lived a few thousand years ago. New Egyptian tomb unearthed. Well, at first Mika started getting angry because this brought back memories of what happened to him. But after a few minutes of deep breathing, he was able to calm down. People were excited about the new discovery because the mummy was really glitzy and full of treasures. But everyone was nervous when they opened the mummy's sarcophagus because no one wanted to repeat of the Mika situation. Things were different this time around though. First of all, the mummy was much better preserved and calm than Mika. And Mika was kind of annoyed when the people on the news kept pointing that out. When the mummy stepped out of his tomb, he didn't just start randomly destroying things. In fact, he seems curious about the modern world and everything on it. Like water fountains, soda, skateboard. Calliope started appearing on morning talk shows like Good Morning America and all that. And before long, he was everyone's favorite mummy. And Mika never would have admitted he was jealous, but he was. In fact, Calliope was so popular that people started making all sorts of mummy merchandise and used his image without asking permission. Mummy gift. So Calliope hired a slick lawyer, and before long, all that stuff was shut down. But then Calliope's lawyer took it a step farther. His lawyer trademarked the mummy, which made it so that Calliope was the only one who could use the name. And then she made a big announcement about it in front of the TV camera, the mummy. Well, this really ticked off Mika, who didn't think it was right that Coyote could do that. Plus, Mika was annoyed that he didn't think of it first. After a while, Coyote had his first fashion line, and kids' cereal, and even a major motion picture in the works. And everywhere Mika went, there was a Coyote face. He was mad. Mika thought it was time for him to cash in the mummy craze too. So he started calling himself the original mummy. And he put a few ads out there. The original mummy. Available for birthday parties, events, birthdays. But a few weeks later, Mika got a letter from Coyote's lawyer threatening to sue him for everything he owned unless he took down the ads from legal content of the movie. But this just made Coyote mad. Maybe not as mad as when he used to go around destroying cities with his mummy powers, but still pretty mad. So Mika hired a lawyer of his own, and he sued Coyote to try and stop him from calling himself the mummy, since Mika was famous first. And it was a huge trial, and everyone watched it on TV. Mummies square off in court. Well, Mika didn't have a lot of money, so his lawyer wasn't as slick as Coyote's. And when the trial ended, the judge ruled that Coyote was the winner. Mika had to agree he'll never use the name the original mummy or the classic mummy or anything like that. In fact, all he was allowed to do was call himself a mummy in lowercase letters. For a while, Mika tried to make some money by calling himself a mummy. But you really can't make any money with a name like that. Take a picture with a mummy, $3. Mika started working out at Museum Park for Fright Nights in October. But it wasn't that much fun because it was a lot harder to scare people these days. Grrr! Mika still wasn't giving up though. He started calling himself the Dead Photographo to get around the court agreement. But it turns out there was already a professional wrestler with that name. And Mika just ended it up back in court. It is not fair for Mika. It is not fair at all for Mika. Always goes to court. Things were really great for Coyote for a few years, but after a while, the whole mummy act got stole, and people stopped going to his movies. And eventually, he got into comedy, but he made a few stinkers, and that was the end of his film career. Not your dad's mummy. Then someone claimed they found a big toe in the box of mummy flakes, and Coyote got sued for $1 million. Big toe found in cereal. And even though it turned out the person who sued him made the whole thing up, nobody would buy any food products from the word mummy on them after that. Soon Coyote's money started to dry up and he couldn't afford the fancy lifestyle he was used to. After a while, he had to sell his private jet and his 3 mansions at a discount. Things got even worse when his wife left him and took half his money. Coyote finally hit rock bottom when he had to sell his own graphics. But things started to turn around for Coyote when he ran into the old arch enemy, Mika, who was working as a food bagger at the grocery store. The two mummies got to talking. It turned out they had a lot in common, and they thought Coyote and Mika become friends. And after a while, Coyote moved into Mika's apartment. And even though they didn't always get doing as roommates, the one thing they agreed on was that television really was a pretty great invention. Science project. Raleigh.